Welcome back to the in.pencil podcast. I am Adam.
And I'm Jess.
And this is part 2 of our new sub-series on the paranormal. Did you know that in 2017, Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 and Angels and Airwaves, along with Lou Elizondo, who used to be head of the Advanced Aerial Threat Intercept Program, a Pentagon program that was developed in the late 2000s to investigate claims of unidentified aerial phenomenon. These two individuals together released a few videos that highlighted military encounters with UFOs using FLIR, which is forward-looking infrared. And these videos are like all over the place now. And the Pentagon, the Navy, just came out and said, yep, these are real videos. And that's about it. And now people are saying that the Navy and by proxy the US government has acknowledged the existence of aliens, which is not exactly what they did. They did acknowledge that the videos were real, because prior to that they had been, I guess, not exactly declassified. I think they were declassified, but they weren't for public release. They were like FOUO, more or less. But now they're declassified, and there's a whole documentary series on History Channel called Unidentified that outlines the history of the videos, and the pilots are in the documentary series, and they're being interviewed, and they're talking about their experiences and what they saw firsthand, and people who were on the ships that were nearby, what they experienced and saw. It's a really cool series. But all that to say that aliens exist, I guess.
Maybe.
Potentially.
Look, there are a few options. The first thing I have to say about this, and this is kind of unrelated, but I loved everyone. I saw a bunch when these got declassified. I saw a bunch of things that said like Navy has videos of possible UFOs, and I'm like, You can't have a possible UFO. It's either an identified object or it's an unidentified object. There's no such thing as a possible UFO. It is a UFO, but is it a UFO in the colloquial term, or is it a UFO in the strict definition of the fact that it is a flying object that's unidentified?
Yeah, unfortunately, that term has been conflated or has been, the UFO term is equivalent in pop culture to aliens, grays, and but then you could dive into the realm of, okay, so if these are unidentified, are they just unidentified to the public? Are they products of US government top secret development programs in conjunction with like Boeing or something, or are they of origin of a foreign country, so we wouldn't know what they are to begin with? All these videos are taken all over the world too, not just the main ones are off the coast of San Diego, and the others are sort of Middle East and off the coast of Virginia and stuff. Continue. Go ahead. You guys something to say?
Yeah, so that gets into the thing. It's either aliens. I feel like I should be that History Channel guy. I'm glad to hear that History Channel did a video, has apparently done a series that involves aliens in its actual history instead of their speculative stuff that they tend to do, forgetting that they're supposed to be a History Channel.
Yeah.
Let's not get into TLC, what that used to actually be.
Oh my God.
It was created by NASA, I believe, to be a learning channel.
Yeah. Didn't really turn out that way.
Yeah. So either it's aliens and they're super human or whatever. Obviously, they're super advanced, or they wouldn't be on Earth. That I think we can say. If there are any creatures from extraterrestrial creatures that get to Earth, they'd have to be really advanced to be able to get here, since we've never gotten anywhere else. Right. They're much more advanced than we are. Or it's the U.S. government doing weird stuff. Or I think the worst possible scenario is it's a different government that is that much farther advanced that U.S. personnel are like, I don't know what this is,
Yeah.
but it's another country that's doing it. I mean, I guess best case scenario is it's none of those three,
Yeah.
to be
Well,
honest,
if you watch these videos,
unless they're nice
these
aliens.
objects are flying basically from a really high altitude, diving steeply, submerging underwater, and then reemerging elsewhere, and they're moving at speeds that would be impossible for something that we know we've created to be moving at.
Not to mention the G forces that has to be.
Oh yeah, yeah. If it is something we created, there's definitely not a human being inside of it.
No.
Could be a
I,
drone of some
yeah,
description.
I mean, I've played some pretty cool games where you do things like that. Have you ever played Pilot Wings? I actually can't remember the name of the game. It's
Star Fox.
yes, Star. We'll go with Star
Yeah,
Fox because I can't remember the game I'm trying to say. You do. Have you ever done a barrel roll?
only in video games.
Is Tom DeLonge an alien trying to find his people?
Potentially.
And this is his only way is get the U. They say you can come back home if the U.S. government acknowledges that we exist.
Potentially. Yeah.
It's the third Rock from the Sun
A
sequel we
lot
never
of
knew we got.
So if you read the Secret Machines books that go along with all of this stuff that Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy and everyone else is doing, there's a lot of really interesting theories that are put forth. I don't, not theories, not theories, but like revelations that are put forth. Spoiler if we're gonna get into that.
Yes.
Do
But
aliens exist?
so that is a question for a different time. But we are forgetting one other thing that could be. We said it's either the US government,
Yeah.
another government. It could be aliens. It could be random debris that's just flying around. Yes, okay, it's a weather balloon. Isn't that right? Isn't it
I,
always a weather balloon?
or a Chinese
A
lantern.
Venus.
I don't
Oh,
think
okay.
weather balloons have the capability of submerging underwater and then re-emerging elsewhere at an accelerated rate and then going at thousands of feet in the air in a
What do
matter of
you
seconds.
what do you think NASA's doing with all that climate change money?
Fair, but not going to the moon.
Oh, that's true. I mean, why would we go to the moon? Like the moon is. I
Been
mean, there is
there,
a.
done that.
That's kind of, from what I gather, that's kind of what happened. We got
Yeah.
there, and they're like, well,
Oh.
"What do we do?" They went there 6 times, and I guess after they started playing golf on the moon, they were like, maybe we should just stop sending people to the moon before they start doing some really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
We almost got like one of those MTV The Moon shows or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
like a
another
real world moon.
and you know those little like carts they drove around with? We could have Pimp My Moon cart.
MTV. We take six strangers, put them in spacesuits, put them on the moon, and watch what happens. With hidden cameras everywhere. These people have no idea they're being watched. It's like the Truman Show, but for astronauts.
On the moon. Except astronauts should know they're being watched at all times and recorded.
They should, but in this completely fake premise I've made up, they're unaware.
A lot of the Apollo missions, they kept a log of all the radio or the communication,
Yeah.
and that's public. So you can hear pretty
Yeah.
much every stupid and weird and funny and just silly and just random thing that has ever been said between Houston and Apollo missions.
Oh, that's worth digging into.
I've heard. I think my favorite was something like we are go for pee when one of the astronauts was using the restroom. He was like, "We are go for pee."
So that reminds me, completely off topic, but equally worth pointing out. I think there's a website that is specifically dedicated. Yeah, websites exist that is specifically dedicated to archiving. You know how planes have black boxes that record basically everything that's being said, right? So this website archives like the last words of pilots before the plane crashes. So like you can hear all kinds of like, well, I guess this is it. Like, I mean, I shouldn't laugh about it. It's kind of morbid, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna put it in the show in the notes
Good golly.
for the
That
thing.
is
It's insane. When you go on there and they're just yeah, they're like, everything from reporting engine problems to God knows what. It's all on there and it's insane.
that's
So
so yeah, I want to say two real quick things. So the first thing is like I've had since I was like a kid, I think I've had this weird obsession with the last words and learning
really,
it. Yeah, and I didn't realize that was a normal thing. But apparently I'm not the only one who's had that obsession. When you talk about that, that creeps me out a little bit because I've always wanted to know like what are the last things people say. John Green, who is an author famously for The Fault in Our Stars, has always had this obsession too, so much so that it's in one of his books called Looking for Alaska, where
really.
the main character is obsessed with last words and figuring out what people's last words are and remembering and just remembering famous last words, some of which are silly and some of which are very like deep. And so one, I forgot who it was, but one person's like, I'm not going to have last words. His last words are basically saying he refused to have last words because that's
Wow.
silly.
I wonder if there's
But
somewhere out there that archives like the last things that prisoners say before they get executed, like people, death row mates and stuff.
probably, I wouldn't be shocked on that.
That'd
Yeah,
be
most of these
interesting.
are like famous things that people have said, like famous people, like because that's who they keep up with their last words.
Hmm.
There's also a really, really interesting How I Met Your Mother episode where one of the characters loses his dad and he spends an entire episode trying to trying to remember what the last words his father said to him because all of his other family remembers the last thing their father said and he doesn't remember, and it goes through that. And
Wow.
as someone who has, wondered about that when I've lost family members and friends, I've been like, what were the last things we said? It really hit on a personal level. And the episode's called, I think, Last Words. And then it's just that idea of like, what were the last words you ever said to someone or someone
Yeah.
ever said to you? Not just the last words they ever said, but your last meaningful conversation.
Yeah. Well, okay. That went from, but the website. Yeah, you might like the website then. I'm gonna link it in the show
Yeah.
notes. We can browse through it at our leisure.
Yes. The other thing I was going to say is like we talked about what these aircrafts could be alien, they could be U.S., they could be another government, they could be weather balloons or lanterns. Is that what you said?
Chinese lanterns. Yeah, sure.
Chinese lanterns, of course, or they could be bugs, just like bugs flying around.
That's what.
And it's funny, but we're going to get back into that in a little bit about bugs flying around, probably. The other thing we have not discussed of what they could be is they could be something that is not from our plane of existence, but
See,
something that has broken through.
I wanted to bring that up because that can segue perfectly into the main topic, which is should you believe in the paranormal or should you not believe in the paranormal? That was a question we posed during our last podcast that we never answered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'd be good to revisit that and see
Yes.
what our conclusion is.
Yes. So I think a way to do this is very simple. We give reasons why you should believe, then we give reasons why you should not believe, and then we let you, the viewer, listener,
Listener.
this is a podcast, check out our YouTube channel. We do have one of those where you can view things that we've done,
Yeah.
Including some really fun stuff that's coming up, like next month, if I can get the stuff that I need to get. I have gone through so much. Anyway, that needs to be cut out probably. But
That's fine. So
I'm just saying,
let's
like,
plug
yeah,
let's plug the YouTube channel real quick. So on the YouTube channel,
yes,
we have a variety of things that we're working on just as a creative outlet. We're
yeah,
doing a Super Mario World 96 exit playthrough, which is fun. And then we have some poetry on there. We got, I don't know what else, some other stuff on there. Some of it's funny, some of it's serious. It's just a reflection of who we are, and it's a portion of our life. So if you like it, go, if you're interested in that, go check it out and enjoy.
yes, and that is at inpencil.no, youtube.inpencil.live.
Yeah, that's the shortcut to get there since we
Yeah,
don't have in order to get a custom YouTube URL, you have to have 1,000 subscribers, and we have 8 right now. So we're almost there.
Yes, it's going to be a while. I think we're going to need to stop video. You're starting to.
Okay. All right. Let me turn off the video.
So yeah, we've got. We don't have that many subscribers now, but feel free to subscribe, join the party. We're having a lot of fun out there. We're trying to put out videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and a few different types. And we've got some cool things on the works that we're trying to do, and future projects that will be coming up there in the next few months.
Yep, really taking advantage of the opportunity to explore creatively what we like doing. So it's been a long time coming.
And check out our blog too. Adam's mostly writing on the blog, but actually I think I've never written on the blog.
Yeah, my writings are basically rants, but that's fine. That's what it's there for.
Yes. Yeah, so go read his rants.
So the paranormal, belief in the paranormal. All right, so what is it? So we're talking about reasons why you should. I'm writing this down.
Yes.
And should not. So let's.
Yes.
I'm gonna total up the list when we're done, and I'll tell you who the objective winner is. Here.
The objective winner. This is how we decide it. Whoever has more points.
Our meaningless on-the-fly list is exactly how we're dictating the rest of the society should function.
So we're telling you right now, we're going to make it. We're giving you the option at the end of this podcast to make your own choice and own decisions. But truthfully, we're going to tell you the answer so you do not have to waste your time actually doing research and learning things on your own.
Yeah, effectively, we're using the same method that the U.S. government uses with the media to manipulate your decisions for you so that you don't have to think for yourself. That's kind of the objective here. So,
yeah.
All right. So
we're going to start with why you should believe in the paranormal. This is tough because we're saying why you should believe in something we cannot prove.
Well, let's reemphasize our definition of the paranormal first.
Yes.
So paranormal is anything that is unexplained, that is of an unknown origin, not including, say, aliens or grays or UFOs or whatever, not including that branch. But does that also include, would you include cryptids like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, that kind of stuff in that?
See, I do not, truthfully. And here's why. Because here's my definition of paranormal and supernatural, because I use those interchangeably.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't, but to me, the paranormal or the supernatural are things that go beyond the laws of physics as we understand.
Okay.
Bigfoot does not go beyond the laws of physics as we understand it. He or she. We always say Bigfoot is being a male, but there would be like at least 2 genders or 2 sexes of Bigfoot, because that's how mammals reproduce. So, yes. So you would Bigfoot would just be a normal other animal that just exists out there. The same for the New Jersey Devil or El Chupacabra or the Yeti. They're just animals. Or even the Loch Ness Monster, just an animal. They're not doing anything that's different from how physics works that we know of, right?
I mean, I guess maybe, well, in some way I would say they're probably violating the laws of nature as we understand them, but that's just a limitation on our understanding and not necessarily a limitation on the laws of nature.
Yeah, we're discovering new species all the time that we're like, oh, we didn't know that existed. And because we just haven't looked for it necessarily, or we haven't found it. You could probably go in your backyard and take a sample and put it underneath a microscope, and you might discover a new species of bacteria that's never been seen before. Or go into the Amazon jungle and discover a new species of plant that's never been known, or a new species of a bug that's never been seen before. So that's how I treat those. Now, if we're talking about like dragons that breathe fire and have arms, legs, and wings, those do kind of go beyond physics, because on Earth, everything evolved to have 4 limbs at most, and dragons would by nature have 6 limbs, because wings count as birds' arms, and dragons generally are shown with 3. They have wings, they have arms, and they have legs.
And what about spiders and ants?
We're talking, sorry, vertebrates.
Oh, okay. All right.
I should have clarified that. But yeah, spiders
Gotcha.
and ants are invertebrates, so they
Right.
don't follow the same rules on limbs.
So, so now that we've beaten the shit out of the definition of the paranormal here, so basically we're mainly emphasizing spirits and ghosts.
Yes.
It's
Kind of the things that, yeah, that are just kind of spirits and ghosts. That's pretty much.
shadow people, demons, maybe.
Yeah, I would put that. Demons are spirit, right?
More or less, I think maybe just like, well, it will. I guess it depends on how you define a spirit. Because for me, a spirit would be something that was alive in this realm on this planet at one point and then passed on, whereas demons are generated from another realm and then cross over.
Gotcha. So yeah, and that I would put demons and angels onto that, because demons are actually like the fallen version of angels, the same way orcs are the fallen versions of elves in at least Lord of the Rings and a lot of other media probably.
Yeah. So we'll just say, aside from cryptids and aside from aliens / UFOs, we're generally speaking in a spiritually paranormal manner at this point.
Yes.
Why we will should not.
Yeah. We will discuss aliens at another time. Aliens do follow, and we can get into how they do and do not follow the laws of physics. Yeah. But we're just going to. That's also my personal definition. It has to do with the laws of the universe as we know it. But that's, you can come up with your own definition. But we're just going to stick with the ghosts, spirits, supernatural. Santana, DC Talk.
Got it.
I don't know what other bands have an album named Supernatural.
I don't either. All right. So what's your list? Because I might what's your list?
So reasons why you should believe in the paranormal.
Okay.
1, here's the thing: humans have a consciousness, right? We are conscious. We understand that we exist, which is a strange thing to think about. That the universe has something in it that understands that it exists and actually has named the universe. The universe created something that named itself.
Right.
And so there is consciousness that exists, and that can be messed with. Yes, you can alter states of consciousness. Yes, but here's the thing: at the end of the day, is it's really hard to define consciousness and to determine how it exists. That's been always kind of a question in a lot of sciences, is like, what is it and how does it exist? So the idea of the consciousness is something that seems maybe separate from the physical, our bodies, which means that when we die, where does that consciousness go? Does that consciousness die, or is that just something else? And I think because the consciousness doesn't seem to follow the same nature as the rest of our body, that it could go somewhere else and do something else, meaning that it's not tied to the laws of the rest of ourselves. So in that way, does our consciousness go on into the spirit realm?
Right.
That's maybe not the world's best definition, because you can probably poke a lot of holes into it, but it is something interesting where the idea of like, we have a consciousness, we can't really define it well, or why it exists, or why we are conscious beings. There is a possibility that it is something more than just our physical realm. There's my first.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And I think that's pretty much, aside from experiential proof that the paranormal exists in some way. By experiential, I mean like people having experiences. I don't know if I was saying that correctly, but aside from experiences, that was going to be one of, that's definitely on my list of reasons. Yeah, experience would be another reason. I think you should acknowledge the existence of the paranormal, because a lot of people have claims to experience, and some people have collective claims to experience, where a lot of people have seen the same event or have made the same observation, or people have made similar observations at different points in time that correlate to one another that they would have never known. When you see claims of people having experiences that have similarities, that there's no way those stories could have crossed lines, but there's correlation between one person's experience and another person's experience. There's a sort of pattern.
It's having multiple sources with the same information, which is a good way to find research when you have two different people who are not connected, who have the same experience on something. So if there's a car accident and one car drives away and it was like, and you have like four different people say it was a blue Mercedes, you're going to say, oh, it was probably a blue Mercedes.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, when you have a bunch of different people say, this is what happened, and they all kind of say the similar things, and there's no way that they have any connection to each other. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, like especially whenever the stories span long periods of time, like someone in the 60s witnesses something that happened in the 90s, or that also happened in the 90s, or that repeated itself, a repeating event or a recurring event. I think you see that a lot with places that are haunted by residual spirits, or they're having residual paranormal event happen, like footsteps walking down a hall at the same time every single night. Like it's just a residual energy that repeats itself on a pattern. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Consciousness. I completely agree with you on that. Experience. So I guess you can put like stories or experiences there. What other reasons should you?
I will say that there are bodies of science who study this stuff. Yes, and have and I will not show a lot of expertise. I did not research this particular one that well, but there are bodies of science. Parapsychology obviously is one, but there are other ones too that have shown a lot of weird stuff to be true, or to be able to be duplicated, where you have like a strange phenomenon that happens and it happens again, and it's unexplainable.
Yeah.
We don't know why certain things happen. Granted, you could, no, we won't get into the opposites of that yet, but there are a lot of strange things out there that have been seen, that have been studied, and there's been no other explanation for it, but it has been scientifically studied and shown to, yeah, this weird thing happens.
So one of those is out of body experiences. Out of body experiences. If somebody's on their deathbed, the spirit leaves their body, and then the person recovers, and the spirit returns to the body, and they describe like an out of body experiences. You know what I mean?
Yes, and like they'll have like on those. I don't know how verified this is, but I've heard stories of them putting like things up on top of the rooms, where only if you were up on the top of the room or floating above could you see these words that are said, and people are able to say what words were up there.
Right.
That type of stuff. Or they're seeing things that there's no way they could have seen in the room from their location, or would have heard in the room from their location.
Yeah.
What's another one that you have?
For reasons why you should believe in the paranormal.
Yes.
So when you're a child and you have like, a lot of kids have their invisible friend, what do they call it? Imaginary friend or whatever. Or
I still
there's.
have my imaginary friend, but he's socially distancing from me.
That's a very relevant joke.
Yes, it is. If you're listening to this in 3 years, you're gonna be like, I don't get it. Why is that funny?
No, social distancing will still be around in 3 years. At least for me, it will be. When I go to Walmart and there's somebody that's breathing down my neck in line, that takes me off to no end. So the social distancing will exist for me forever, because now I have a reason to justify telling them to fuck off and back up.
They're like, we don't have to do that anymore. Nope, my doctor says I still need to.
Oh, seriously. Shit, I forgot what I was going to say.
I don't know. When you're a kid and you have an imaginary friend.
Yeah, so my story from last time about my experience when I was a kid, that was one of several. But I think kids are more susceptible and more open-minded to having experiences that reveal the idea of another realm or another dimension or something where there's crossover. Like whatever theory you want to come up with for why this stuff happens, kids are more, I think kids are more susceptible to observing it. And so if you have a kid, or if you have something like a cat, right? Does your cat ever just like stare at something in the room that you don't know what it's staring at, but it's following it around? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like unless you're unless you're conditioned like we are as a society, we're conditioned to just basically label this kind of thing as bullshit and then move on into a more logical, but at the same time we're conditioned to be religious, so I don't really understand how those two things happen at the exact same time. But maybe we're institutionalized, maybe that's what it is, we're more institutionalized. But anyway, we somehow at some point in our life form a mental block on that vulnerability, that aspect of our consciousness or of our observable, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so the fact that we are open to that until we're told not to be, that makes me believe, or leads me to think, that by default we are meant to be open to that. We're meant to have a perception of that reality or some interaction with it, and then later on we're brought to a place where that's now, that's not cool anymore. Like at some point you gotta stop believing in ghosts, man. Like maybe at the same time that you stop believing in Santa Claus, you're told that ghosts aren't real either. But you know what I mean? So I think that, I guess all that to say, the default state of humanity is to have experiences with a spiritual realm in a real sense, and not just in a cognitive imaginary sense, like modern spirituality is. Does that all make sense?
Yes. So it's this idea that as we get older, we put away our quote unquote childish things. And those childish things include imagination, playfulness, and openness to the world that is all around us that we don't see.
Right.
Or
that we stop observing, because at some point we
yeah.
stop paying attention to, and that's what I was saying before about this whole COVID thing. So at some point we stop paying attention to the things that don't matter, or about the things that we think don't matter, or the society tells us don't matter. So if it's our spirituality, if it's our interaction with another realm, if it's our curiosity, our creativity, all of these things, at some point we're told that doesn't matter because you have a job that you have to report to at 9 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, you have credit card bills and you have student loans and you have this and you have that. So all these other things take precedence over what defines you as a person, which we can go into a whole thing about identity at some other point. But the part of what defines you is your experience. And part of your experience is probably something. Continue. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, a very practical way of looking at this is how we literally don't look at the same things we look at as when we're kids. When you're a kid, you're looking everywhere a lot, all the time. Physically, you're looking everywhere. And when you're an adult, how often do you look up?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a kid,
exactly.
You're always looking up because you're looking up at adults. And so that just shows you, like, just from a very literal point of view, that we don't literally look up that often as we grow up. And so we're not looking in all the directions that we can as we grow up because we don't need those directions as much as we did as kids. As kids, we're trying to figure out everything. So we're looking around. If you've ever been around a baby, they're literally looking and grabbing at everything that's around them. But as you get older, you're like, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to pay attention to all this stuff. There's all this stimuli that I don't need. So I just literally block it all out and only look forward.
Right. But your default is to be curious and your default is to be creative, and but you were conditioned through institutional education, through just having to survive in a society where it's based off of, practical things like money and bills and debt.
I mean, this isn't just like any society. This is just every society.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, even like, I won't say that, but yeah, any human formed civilization, there are going to be outside stressors on you that oppress you and keep you from experiencing life as you would if you were just left to your own devices. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think that by default we should, the fact that that when you're a kid, most of the time when you hear people tell stories about their experiences with the paranormal, it happens when they're a kid because they're more susceptible to it and they're more open-minded to it. They haven't been taught not to be yet. So because that to me is the default, then that's the reality. and everything else that we put on ourselves, that's a fabrication of our own devices. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why you should
Time
believe
just,
in the paranormal.
yeah. And I'll add one last thing to that.
Yeah.
I'm not great with string theory, but hey, let's bring it up. Uh, so there's, I'm not going to get into string theory actually, but it's an offshoot of it that I know of. Is this idea of like, we know we live in a 3-dimensional spatial world and 4 dimensions if you count time. And then if you keep going out dimensions and you get to like dimension 10, anything is possible.
Yeah.
And so there are kind of science, physics beliefs that we're in just one possibility of all of them, and they all kind of exist. I'm not going to get into all the details because I will screw it up. But a simple way to look at this is the multiverse. The idea of a multiverse. There are multiple versions of existence out there in multiple realms, and they all kind of exist at the same time. That we don't live in a universe, we live in a multiverse. And is it possible to connect between the multiverses? And it may be. And some of that, could be the supernatural or paranormal, or it could be that we live in a multiverse where things move in and out of all of them. And
Right.
that's the paranormal. That's how you move in and out of through the multiverse is
Right.
outside the physical. Physical can't move across because you're moving from one set of matter into another one that wouldn't exist in the same way.
Yeah. So those are reasons why you should. Do you have any more that you can think of?
No, actually, I don't. I
Okay.
think
Well, I have
that's a
one
pretty good
more.
amount. We're not. Oh, you do.
I have one more
Here we go.
because
This is the one
this is the
that's
bombshell
going to
right
make you.
here.
This right here.
This is the bombshell.
Drum roll, please.
Since everything is possible, and since there has been not enough, just like I talked about last time, there has been not enough scientific research into this matter to debunk the fact that any of this stuff actually happens. By default, there has the onus. What is it? The onus is on
the burden of proof.
Yeah, the burden of proof is on the accuser rather than it is on the whoever is saying that the story is false or the narrative is false. The burden is on them to disprove it. Otherwise, by default, since everything is possible, there may be some truth to all of this, to everything we're talking about. Bam, burden of proof.
I don't know. I don't know if you did your logic there right, but we'll go with it.
Okay, go
I
with
think
it.
your logic is. I think the burden of proof is actually on the person who makes the accusation, and the accusation would be the person who says that the paranormal exists,
Well,
not
I'm
the
flipping
person who
it on
says
its
you're.
head. I don't care.
Okay,
I'm flipping
you're
it
like
on its head.
I'm taking logic, and I'm taking logic to the logical end. Logic, you're like grabbing logic and saying we're going into the illogic.
Well, since we did no preparation for this, I didn't study it for any of this stuff. That's what we're going with. Those are my reasons. Since I am removing the burden of individual free thinking people to make up the mind for themselves, I'm making up your mind for you and saying that what I just said, I don't even know what I just said, but everything I just said is true. There you go.
Yes.
Now, let's get into the should nots, shall we?
Okay. So, yes. So now we've just discussed reasons why you should believe in the paranormal, including reasons, beliefs. We'll do a end cap, I guess.
Yeah.
So reasons why you should not. You go first, Adam.
It's unpopular, or I'll clarify that. It is unpopular in public culture to admit to having a belief in the paranormal, even though secretly you may have a belief in the paranormal, because there's a social stigma around it. So it's easier just to say that's all BS and I don't buy into it. That's the easy. There we go. Okay, it's easy. It's easy not to. There you go. How about that?
Yep.
That's number one.
Any more to that? Is that just kind of? I mean, that's pretty simple.
No, I'm not gonna beef up these should nots because I'm on the side of should, not should not. So I'm not gonna beef up the should nots. That'd be counterproductive.
Well, I think if we're going to do a true, we have to we kind of give them as non-biased as possible. So I will beef up the should nots.
Well, okay, let me beef up what I just said then. Fine, I will expand on what I just said. It's easy not to, and you've never given the person who claims to have these experiences or claims to believe in this, has never given me any reason or any proof that any of this stuff has actually happened or exists. And therefore, by default, my default position is it does not happen until you prove to me otherwise. So I need evidence. Present evidence, and I'll buy into your theory. How about that?
Okay. I think that's much better beefed up.
There you go. I'm here to serve.
Put some beef on there. Yeah. So my first, are you done with that? Sorry, I should ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my first counter argument, reason why you should not believe. The vast majority of beliefs of the paranormal and experiences can easily be explained with things that we know that naturally occur in nature. Naturally occur in nature. I just said that.
Well, it made sense when you said it, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, things that naturally occur. I have one point that I'm going to get to in a bit, but so we have first of all, I just want to point out most of the ghost hunting TV shows you see on TV, they're fabricated. We just have to say that, like, when we're talking about beliefs in the paranormal and evidence, it's not these ghost hunting shows. They're all fake. None of them are real.
Yeah.
It's not that the people who are doing it don't believe in it and haven't seen it. It's just that TV's channels need something to put on the trailer to get you to watch, and they need reasons for you to keep watching. So they just make up stuff all the time, and they do really nice edits. So we will say that, first of all, that these TV ghost hunting shows are not helping because they make it look real, and then when you get behind it, you learn, no, they just made all this stuff up.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's a lot of things that happen can be explained by natural events. Most common is we see I always hear about orbs. Orbs is like the thing people love to talk about, where you see photos and you see like these little like flashes of light that are just flying around. You're like, oh, there's a ghost or there's somebody. And it's like, no.
Yeah, that's dust.
It's a bug or it's dust. And this is where I was getting into, when you see the alien craft that flew underwater and came back out and it was going super fast. Well, a lot of our bugs that fly around, a lot of the flying like insects and etc., those type of animals, they're not all insects, but I can't think of what they're called, all the other ones, but they fly at really erratic rates and they look like they're going really fast.
So what you're saying is it's forced perspective.
Yes. A lot of times it's just, you see it flashes off, the light flashes off of it. One of my favorite things I've ever done is, I haven't really talked about this, but my mom used to always think that there was a ghost cat on her bed because she could feel the cat walking on it, and there would be no cat, or the cat that we had two cats, and one would already be sleeping beside her and the other would be on the other side of her, and then she'd feel a third cat. Mm-hmm. Well, that is actually just her muscles were relaxing, and she felt in her mind just said, oh, somebody's walking on the bed. And she thought her room was haunted. And so I was like just randomly taking pictures in there. And my aunt said, clearly you see a ghost face in this picture. And what it was the reflection off the light bulb from the flash of my camera put something on the back wall. And my aunt was like, it's a ghost. And I'm like, it's a reflection.
Oh, that's matrixing. Yeah.
And
it's whenever you see a picture of something and your mind creates shapes out of things, or creates images from things that aren't really there. It's just,
and that's what,
yeah.
That was actually one of my other points that I wanted to get into, and I'll go ahead and get into it if you want me to, since
sure,
we just
go ahead.
did it.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in a second real quick. But this one, like a lot of things can be proven another way. A lot of natural phenomenon looks unnatural. The aurora borealis can look like ghosts. You can see it can look like some supernatural thing happening, and all it is just lights that happen naturally. There are flashes of lights, lightning, etc., like so many different things that are just natural occurrences. And then kind of piggybacking off that into specifically the mind sees things and freaks out. And so when you get into seeing patterns that aren't really there, that is you hinted on that. That's a psychological phenomenon known as pareidolia.
Yeah.
And basically, it's where we see patterns, and a lot of times it's where we see faces. And where this comes into place is like in a house, you look into a mirror and you see a face in the mirror, but what you really see is like 3 smudges, and you think it's a face because we're trained to see 2 eyes and a mouth.
Yeah.
And that is instinctually necessary for our existence as a species. That what makes us top dog in this world is that we can look into bushes. Our ancestors could look in bushes and see tigers because they could see 2 eyes and a mouth, and they're like, there's a tiger there. And it kept them alive because they could get into fight or flight mode really fast because they could see patterns very fast. But now we don't need to worry about tigers in the bushes, at least
because they're all dead. We killed them all.
Tiger King got him. Also, very much a time. I think we're very much dating this podcast for all the future people.
There's a date on the podcast whenever you play, so whatever, who gives a shit. Yeah.
So for those who do not know what 2020 was like, Tiger King and social distancing, that could rhyme.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we don't need that anymore, but we still have those instincts, and we see those patterns. This is how you see the face on Mars that wasn't really a face, or why you think there are messages in the newspaper telling you to do something, or we just have these psychological phenomena where we're not paying attention to stuff and seeing what it really is. We're just, our mind is doing quick ideas. And so we feel a presence, and we say there's something there.
Yeah.
When in fact, it's not really there. We're just freaked out, and we're listening to all our senses are on edge.
Yeah. So I've noticed that I guess I'll tell a story real quick to kind of to amplify your statement there. I've been on a lot of ships in my life. And at night, when you're on a ship, you go into basically you turn all the lights off, and there's all the hallways. They're called passageways on a ship. They go from white light to red light. It's called darkened ship. So you darken ship, and the reason you darken ship is because you don't want any white light escaping through like a hatch or something, and your ship being visible from miles and miles away because of the white light. So you darken ship. Halls are dark. And it's a really eerie feeling, especially on older ships. So when I would like get up to go to a watch at night, get out of bed, go take a shower, get dressed, and go upstairs, it'd be like 2 or 3 in the morning. So you go up and you're walking down these long, narrow hallways where the space is sort of confined, right? And every time you can almost feel there's something like behind you. But really it's like your senses creating that anxiety yourself, and then you start walking faster, or you like run. It's the same thing as whenever, I guess I talked about it in one of the YouTube videos, whenever you're down in the basement and you turn the lights off real quick and you run upstairs because you think something's gonna come get you. But and everyone does that, right? But really it's just your mind is creating that anxiety because you have through some sort of conditioning been told to fear the darkness, even though like objectively the space that you're in, nothing has changed except for your perception of that space.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that conditioning has made us fear the darkness. I think that might be natural.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Conditioning has made us fear spiders.
Yeah. True. Or tigers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
tiger lilies.
It's weird because the space that you're in, if you're in a room from noon until midnight and nothing in that room changes except for the lighting, your perception of that reality changes. So that's kind of where where I'm going with that, more or less.
Yeah. So yes. Do you have another point of why you should not believe in the supernatural or paranormal?
Continue if you have something, because I'm not sure.
So I have most of mine are kind of going on the same way, but I will say this, kind of added on to that. Like people talk about haunted houses, you have this creepy feeling, and there's cold, and there are cold pockets where where the ghosts are like draining energy, and they make these cold pockets, and then you hear the noises of them. Well, old buildings are very creepy to begin with, because they're just, as you brought up, Adam, just in the same way that like ships are creepy, is because there are these big long spaces of nothing.
Yeah.
Like you have these long narrow halls, but it's a long hall. And in old buildings sometimes, especially like mansions and stuff, it's just a lot of open space. Also, old buildings have cold spots all in them because they're just not well ventilated like newer buildings are. They just can't be. And also they creak because they're old and wood creaks. And so we have this idea of what a ghost is supposed to be. So we start looking for that. And we're like, it's a ghost, when it's like, well, no, it's an old building. And then I have two speculative things that I can get into, but I was going to see if you have another thing.
I think that if you're going to take the stance that the only reality that exists is our reality, then I think you have to be fair and eliminate both the paranormal and the religious in one foul swoop. You can't say one exists and not the other. So I think you have to take a completely a spiritual, a supernatural approach. A is in like anti-supernatural approach, to be fair. And because if you favor one over the other, then you're kind of defeating your own logic, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. How about you?
Okay. So a few other things is a few last points. Like I really got into the things could be naturally explained, and pareidolia, human psyche messes with us. That's mostly what I've been going on to. This last one is similar to that, but also kind of gets into paranormal exists because it's a natural scientific thing that we just haven't figured out yet. And what I mean by that, I've heard this, and I don't know how true it is, but when you get around electromagnetism, sometimes it makes you feel like you're being watched.
Yeah.
And so that idea of when you take certain types of medication, it can do it. When you haven't slept in a long time, you start hallucinating. So that idea of like certain things will make you more perceptive to the supernatural or the paranormal because your senses are completely messed up, whether it is by electricity or by lack of sleep or by your actual senses being messed up by some chemical. In the same way, like kids are more likely to experience paranormal and supernatural. And we talked about that, and that is, yeah, that's true. But maybe it's because everything doesn't make sense to them. And you can go back to when you're a kid and things that were really big deals when you're a kid, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get in so much trouble. Oh my goodness, this is so bad, aren't really big deals as an adult. And you're like, why did I care about that as a kid? And so you don't understand what's going on. So everything is supernatural to you.
Yeah.
Everything is paranormal. Oh my goodness, there's a dog that can run. There are birds that fly in the air. We just can't understand that. And we haven't been able to explain it until we grow up. And then we're able to understand, oh, this happens because of this happens because of that. Like if you took somebody from the 1600s and they came to live here today, they'd be freaked out and think we're like magicians because planes can fly and we have phones that literally hold more information on them than they ever had access to. And it seems so like supernatural almost of what we can do now that they couldn't do back then. So it's just, we've learned more about the laws of physics, and the more we learn, the more we're able to do. We've learned how to heal people in ways that they couldn't do. They didn't believe in germ theory for a long time. People would get mocked if they washed their hands. Surgeons would get mocked if they washed their hands before doing surgery, to the point where some of them like could lose their jobs for washing their hands before surgery a long time ago. And people died in surgery all the time. They didn't know why.
Right.
Now we keep OR so sanitized, and the death rate has dropped a lot. And so that idea of like, there's a lot of things that we're still learning. My favorite theory that I've ever heard, and this is straight up just a theory, I've never heard any good evidence that it's true. And this is like residual hauntings, when someone does the same walk every day in a building for years, it like creates a recording of it.
Yeah.
And then it gets played back
Yep.
over years. Like, so centuries later, you see it at a certain time of day, you see the person walk. Well, that's both a ghost and both not a ghost.
Well, it's residual energy, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a recording in the same way,
Yeah.
where we obviously used to and kind of still do use recordings in the same way, where we make scratches on the wall in light and whatever, and you look at it in a certain way and you can see what it says. But if you look at it another way or another time, you can't see the same thing. So you have to be at the right place at the right time with the right lighting to be able to see this secret message. And sometimes it happens accidentally. And that residual energy is kind of that accidental, you being able to see something. So it exists, but it's natural, but it's like a ghost, but it's not a ghost. But we can, and that would be my last one, is that's not technically paranormal. That's just something that happened, and its effects still happen today. And that's true. Anything, if you walk somewhere, you have made permanent effects to that area in some way. But if you keep doing it over and over again, those permanent effects are really going to show up and be noticeable and be harder to change.
Right. It's like if you're walking through the woods every single day and you take the same path from point A to point B in the woods every single day, eventually that path is going to get beaten down, and it's just going to become a trail at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if you make no concerted effort to make a trail out of that path, it'll naturally occur on its own, because you're affecting the landscape.
Yeah. And so in old buildings, and this is probably why old buildings get more hauntings than newer buildings.
All right, with that, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you for listening. We're gonna phase into the outro right now.